Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is Simran. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself, broaden your mind, open your heart, and discover who you are. Now, here's your host, Simran.
Welcome to another edition of 1111 Talk Radio. I'm so delighted to have you here, and I want you to sit back, take a deep breath, get into your body, and really be present to the moment. This show in particular requires that, especially for you to glean all that my guest is going to share with you. The truth is, we were all energetic before we were formed. There was an intention that was placed before our souls even came into physical form, and that intention always supports us. It supports us in every endeavor that we have in life, and in every experience that occurs, albeit we label it good or bad. My latest trilogy, the 7 series, Living, Being, and Knowing, is very much about how to move through that dimension that we all must go through, which is the embrace of some of our alternative blessings, the ones that we don't necessarily want, but that we do encounter from time to time, to kind of redirect us or to help us learn and to help us grow. That Sacred Oracle trilogy is to help you really deepen into your beliefs and understand what parts of you are wanting to expand beyond who you are. My guest truly understands that all the technology in the world, all the things that we do on the outside, and the many different things that we continuously try really cannot compare to the inner technology that we have, to the ability to really tap into a way to support not only ourselves, but also our world. My guest today is Happy Ali, and he is the author of the Intuition Bible, How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. With a BA degree in psychology from UCLA, he is a prophetic dreamer, a certified master LNP practitioner, and also a certified master clinical hypnotherapist. He's the host of the Happy Insights podcast, and his own spiritual journey began in 1995 when he dedicated his life to the exploration of metaphysical disciplines after a near-death experience inspired a dramatic awakening. He's now sharing so much information in his new book, The Intuition Bible, which includes techniques that work on every level of intuition, starting with hunches, precognition, and dream analysis, and building in direct communication with a multidimensional level of intelligence that is always available. This book is dedicated to the new wave of people who recognize that the future of humanity goes beyond our reliance on technology as a source of information. It is for those who understand that the next phase of human evolution lies in our ability to enhance our intuitive abilities and become multidimensional and intergalactic beings with access to information from inner worlds that dwarfs artificial intelligence. So if you're desiring to take your human experience to the next level, and to everyone who took the wrong advice, read the wrong book, followed the wrong guru, and stopped trusting their inner voice as their ultimate guidance, Happy wants you to understand that we are rarely trained to master the art of tapping into our inner voice and wisdom, and he is here to change that. He wants to help everyone trust the only source of information that knows what is best for them, their own inner well of infinite knowledge. So let's filter out the unnecessary noise, and let's get to know Happy Ali. Welcome, Happy, to 1111 Talk Radio.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Simran. That was a very beautiful introduction. And in the very beginning, when you were talking about your own message, was you were speaking, I thought you were actually reading my book.
Well, that's
we are
part
so
of,
aligned.
Yes, we are very aligned, and it's part of why I mentioned it. So much of my own journey has been through numbers, through following that guidance, even though I didn't know that's what I was following. And so 1111 has been very powerful. And my latest trilogy, 777, is kind of that bridge for a lot of what people go through. And I love how you share that in your way with your book, because I think people discount some of the happenings that take place, the so-called mishaps that we have in our lives, and they allow the ego or the attitude to take them down a different rabbit hole rather than really utilizing it for the purposes that their body, their mind, their soul has really supported that in happening. Can you talk a little bit about that end of our ability to create reality and these types of experiences, how to best utilize them?
Well, you mentioned it perfectly earlier when you said the soul has an intention and it is invested in you and it wants to support you on every step of your path. And it always shows itself in one way or another. And I think that when we quiet the five senses, there's a lot of information that comes through us that is coming directly from our soul perspective that guides us through life. But it never stops there, because just as our body gives us messages, we are a cell of this galaxy, basically, of this universe. So the world outside of us always gives us messages too, because sometimes we don't really have time to quiet the mind and listen internally. So I think those beautiful numbers that you mentioned are great ways for the outer world to bring to our attention when we are in alignment, when we are making changes, when we are kind of losing sight of what's important, and it reminds us that maybe we are on our path. I tend to get numbers a lot right before something bad is going to happen, only because I feel like it's my inner self or my angels telling me, hey, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And I always see all these beautiful numbers. And I also get it when I'm in total alignment. But whenever something bad happens and I see all these beautiful numbers over and over and over and over and over, it just gives me this calming feeling that everything is okay. Everything, like, because I'll see it back to back to back to back to back. It's like nonstop alignment over and over and over. When, let's say, there's this big job that I was going to get and I didn't get it, and it's just the universe telling me, hey, you're okay, you're on the right path. That was not your path that you thought it was. So just hold on tight for a second. So I think that's one of the things.
That's so true. Yes, it is. It's confirmation that really lets us know that we're not alone and that we have that support. And when we talk about all of those messages coming in, there's typically the contrast of all of the external messaging that is constantly bombarding us, and the busyness, the distraction, the onslaught of news and social media feeds, the chaos of, whether it is conspiracy theories or people that are advocating and politics. There's so many things that keep a person out of themselves and oftentimes distracted not only from their intuition, but from setting intention. And you start the book very much talking about the importance of intention. So let's start there, especially in regard to intuition in these times where there feels like there's so much swirling around us.
Well, there is so much contradicting and contrasting information coming through us, and everyone that speaks with so much conviction. And the whole world wants to tell us that what they're telling us is the right thing. And what happens is when we start paying attention to too much information coming in, our brain waves go into this high beta, which is like really high, fast frequency, which is not where our intuition resonates, or how our intuition resonates. And sometimes if we don't really set the intention to tap into our inner wisdom, we really do get lost. So what I always encourage is whenever there's too much information, close some of your senses. The biggest one being your eyes, because that floods you with so much stimuli. And as soon as you close your eyes, your brain waves already start to slow down and resonate with your inner world. And when that happens, you can actually check in and say, hey, should I even be watching this news network, or should I even, pay attention to this, or does this resonate with my soul's purpose? Is this something that I need to hear? And when you quiet the mind, everyone has a different way of receiving messages internally. Some people are empaths. Some people receive gut feelings. Some people receive like physical sensations. It's different for everybody. But once you check in, you actually can decipher the noise, not just by quieting it, but just knowing maybe this is what I should be watching, maybe this is what I shouldn't be watching, or maybe I need to turn everything off altogether. But if you don't set the intention and have the desire and that to tap in, because it's important to actually know that there's a well of wisdom coming in. If you don't really know that there's a well of wisdom that's designed for you with the agenda that is tailored to your happiness, then you won't even have the intention to check in. So
I love how you shared that simple exercise of closing the eyes, because it is so necessary to disconnect the brain. And then your very subtle suggestion, which was to ask the questions, to go back and question, is this really supporting my soul? Is this really supporting my purpose? Does this really feed where my attention should be directed at this time and align with that intuition? Because that level of questioning then helps to clarify us, which then could clarify a further intention or deepen that place of stillness that we have gotten into. That's really, really powerful, Happy, in terms of getting away from the distractedness of what surrounds us at all times. When you're telling people or teaching people to do this, is this something that they need to do multiple times a day? Is it something that they need to do just starting in the morning or in the evening? How best is it now for individuals to start to engage their intuition in this way?
Well, in the beginning, I think you have to do it more, and you have to do it more deliberately, because I always say, figure out the language of your subconscious and how it speaks to you. I have twin boys, and they're 7.5. And one of the exercises to check in with his body and his gut, or their bodies, works for one and one doesn't work for one. So they've both had to practice a lot to figure out what exercises work for them. And in the beginning, it was like gaining a new muscle. For me, when I do a gut check, I get a very clear yes in certain parts of my stomach and certain no's in different parts of my stomach or chest area. And in the beginning, I had to train that muscle. Like really, I used to think thoughts. I was like, when I knew an answer to be a yes, I would ask that question and see what part would light up. And when it was a no, I would check to see what part would light up and keep doing it over and over and over and over and over again until I really recognize those areas. And then during the day, when I'm at a crossroads, I don't even necessarily have to check in anymore, because that feeling shows up and I recognize it. So in the very beginning, it's just like learning how to walk. You have to set a very big intention. You have to practice. You have to see what exercise works for you, and don't compare yourself to other people. Once you figure that out, it almost becomes second nature as time goes by. And you do it less and less intentionally, and it becomes just part of your routine without even noticing it. But when you have big questions at any time of day, you need to sit down and you need to quiet the mind. I used to say it happens when we're on the toilet or in the shower because we are so quiet. But now even when we sit on the toilet, we're on our phones. So like when you're in the shower, it's a great time because you really are shut off from the entire world. And that's when big ideas come to you. So I think to answer your question, in the beginning, set the intentions. You should always set a morning intention anyway, but later to check in, because we have so many decisions we have to make all day long. So it's just getting into the practice of checking in before any decision making, even if it's making a right or a left on the road.
I love how you gave the example of your twin boys having different styles and ways of connecting and discerning their intuition. I think that's so important for individuals to hear. And also, there are many people that probably are going, but I don't know how to trust it. I don't even know that I have intuition. I am not sure that I can get information the way everyone else can. There might be something wrong with me. What advice or words can you offer someone that is in that place?
Well, I just want to say that in every moment that we're awake or alive, we're receiving millions, 11 million or so bits of data that is coming through in our senses, coming through us in our inner senses and outer senses. And our brain can't handle all that. So the subconscious whittles it down to about 167 bits of data or so. So that's like a very a number somebody made up, but it's basically 99.99% of information that comes through you externally and internally gets deleted, distorted, generalized, basically, but still stored into your body. So just imagine how much data is coming at you that you're not aware of. Now, what determines what comes to your awareness is your belief system and what you think about yourself and the world. Because this 167 bits of data, this 0.00004 bit of data that has to come to your awareness has to be relevant. If it's not relevant to your life, it's going to be filtered out. So when someone doesn't believe that they're intuitive, it's not that they're not intuitive, and it's not that they're not receiving inner messages from their inner self. It's just that it's being deleted or just stored in the body. And it's just your belief system doesn't think that it's important enough for it to be included in the little bit of information that you can process per moment. So when you start having a desire for a conversation with your inner world, and when you start seeing evidence, because everyone's had intuitive moments in the past, when you start looking back and acknowledging times where you've had that experience, and you start putting some importance to it, and seeing how maybe other people's intuitive messages has changed our lives or have changed our lives, then the subconscious mind starts to bring in a little bit of that intuitive wisdom and put it into that 167 bits that you can process. And then you start noticing, oh, wait, there is more information. It's just like the whole 1111 thing that I just saw. If you don't think it's important, it doesn't come to your awareness. When you realize, oh, wait, this could be my angels talking to me, then you start noticing it more and more and more and more and more, because it becomes part of the language that you acknowledge to be important. So if you're not, it's like someone who says, I don't dream. Everybody dreams. Every single person dreams. It's just whether your mind thinks that it's important enough for you to remember your dreams. So it's really not whether you're intuitive, it's whether you are being allowed to experience your intuitive self. And when I say being allowed, it's by your subconscious. Your subconscious is deciding whether it's something that you need to be aware of or not. So that's why I wrote a whole book, and a lot of the book is in the beginning igniting the desire and this proving or dispelling the false beliefs about intuition and that you have to be born with it and you have to be one of the select few. And once you get past that, all of a sudden you notice, oh, wait, I've been intuitive all along. I just never really realized it.
Yeah, I love the idea of giving oneself their own permission to even have these experiences, and then trusting that nature of self to do the rest for us, because we do have to establish that relationship as well. So I am kind of reading my own listeners' minds and hearing the thought that, how do I trust that this is intuition and not just my mind or not just my ego?
Well, I always say, whether it's your mind or whether it's your ego or whether it's intuition, is the information uplifting you? Is it helping you? Is it making you feel more empowered and making you feel good and making you feel like you can do anything? If that's the case, then who cares where it comes from? In the beginning, I always say, first of all, any information is just like having a friend, an extra friend around. If this friend is uplifting you and making you feel empowered, and when you listen to this friend, life seems to go better, then listen to your friend. So that's what I always say in the beginning. But in the very, very beginning, you have to start it as the whole process like play, like you're just having fun. Don't do stuff that's very high stake, to where if you listen to your intuition, or you think you're listening to your intuition, something horrible could happen, or you're making these huge decisions. Just do light stuff, very, very casual, light things until you recognize, okay, this feels different than the usual chatter in my mind. Intuition tends to come as like a whole package. Like information doesn't just trickle in slowly. It's more like an aha moment a lot of times. And once you get used to that, you start trusting it more. But somebody was like, oh, I want to go bet on a horse. And I said, don't do that. Go play games. Find out, try to guess how much your grocery bill is going to be before you go to the checkout counter. Do stuff where it's really lightweight. And
yeah, it's so important to have that playful quality so that we relax into the receptivity of many of our own gifts and our senses and our knowledge. And you also say that the logical mind can be the intuitive mind's worst enemy. Talk a little bit more about that.
Well, the logical mind wants proof, and it doesn't really operate outside of, quantifiable things. And the intuitive mind requires more trust, and you have to kind of believe in something before you actually see it. So it's really the opposite sides of your mind. It's the right side of your brain and the left side of your brain. But the good thing is, if you practice with small stuff using your intuition long enough, it becomes proof enough for the logical mind to jump on board as well. But in the beginning, you have to put logic to the side and just play and play and play. And the more you do it, the more it becomes very natural, to where the logical mind says, hey, this information that keeps coming through keeps coming true. Because, so therefore I will jump on board, and now my logic tells me that I need to listen to this intuitive voice, like me in my dreams, which we'll talk about later. When I have a certain dream, my logical mind says, hey, this dream felt very important. I need to pay attention to it. But prior to that, the logical mind would have just said, hey, this is just another dream, let it go. So I hope that answered that question.
Yes, and you slightly referenced something earlier as well, where you talked about go back to the past. And in the book, you discuss using the past as confirmation. We have just a couple of minutes before break, but I thought maybe I'd ask you that question.
Every single person has had a moment in their life, or many, where their gut told them to do something, and you either listened to it or you didn't listen to it. And then in hindsight, you realize, oh, wait, I knew it all along. So when you acknowledge that, you're also awakening a part of you that says, hey, I am intuitive. I just don't always pay attention to my intuition. When I have a workshop and I ask people, I said, who thinks that they're intuitive? Almost everybody raises their hand. And I said, who acts on their intuition? And almost half the people or less raise their hand. But when I ask who thinks they're intuitive, most people really do believe that they're intuitive. but it's just a matter of trusting it and learning the language. And that's why the entire book is dedicated to learning your own language and not trying to follow somebody else's language of what intuition sounds and feels and looks like for you.
The human body is the most advanced piece of machinery in our galaxy. Artificial intelligence and handheld gadgets do not come close to the abilities and functionalities of the human machine. The basic functions of most body parts have been discovered and are not much of a mystery, but scientists have yet to scratch the surface. This is from Happy Ali's book, The Intuition Bible, How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. He has an intuition group coaching that he offers. You want to find out more about that at his website, happyinsights.net. And you definitely want to pick up your copy of the Intuition Bible. Happy's clear explanations and insightful guidance, combined with inspiring true stories from his own and others' direct experiences, demystifies the intuitive process and makes it accessible to you. We'll be right back after these messages with more of Happy Ali, the Intuition Bible. And again, check out his website, happyinsights.net.
Want to see what Voice America is up to behind the scenes? Follow us on TikTok at Voice America Talk Radio.
Have you seen 1111? Do you wonder why certain numbers keep showing up in your life? 11, 111, 22, 33, 444? People all over the world are seeing 1111 and learning the language of universal communication. Subscribe to 1111 Magazine today. www.1111mag.com. 1111 Magazine is a bi-monthly print publication that offers a rich multi-sensory experience. As you engage with experts and topics of consciousness, become enlightened, empowered, and energized, so you live a passionate and authentic life of conscious choices. 1111 Magazine, a daily staple for lifting the mindset, discovering the heart, and stepping into conscious living. 1111 Magazine. Order now at www.1111mag.com. 1111mag.com.
Do you want more? More joy, more abundance, more power and presence? How would it feel to have more loving relationships? More empowered community, greater fulfillment, and life purpose? The 1111 Mastermind community inspires, empowers, guides, and supports transformation. Shift your mind, expand your heart, deepen insights, let go and chart a new course, dream a new dream. The 1111 Mastermind community is an online portal for personal transformation and soulful expansion. Go to courses.1111mag.com. That's courses.1111mag.com. Change begins with you. Let it be simple, convenient, and transformative. The time is now. Step through the 1111 gateway. Courses.1111mag.com.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You are listening to 1111 Talk Radio. Simran is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at IamSimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
Do you feel connected to your intuition? Would you like to have a deeper connection with that? To be able to trust yourself more? To open to all of the different types of ways that your intuition speaks to you? And to discover that language so that you feel a greater sense of inner authority? Happy Ali says that all that you experience in your life is directly related to your specific vibrational frequency, and you determine your frequency based primarily on your beliefs and frequent thoughts. The universe always wants to prove you right, so make a conscious effort to think thoughts and form beliefs that give you the life that you desire. Become the observer of your life and be aware when you form blockages that can impede your success. This is from Happy Ali's book, The Intuition Bible, How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. You definitely want to find out more about all of the things that he is doing by going to happyinsights.net. And you can explore more about his own intuition group coaching if you'd like support in developing that connection to your intuition. Welcome back, Happy. I want to talk a little bit about vibration, frequency, and belief. I read that passage from your book just now, and some people may not understand the distinction or why that's important when it comes to intuition.
Well, basically, because the whole world is made of vibration and frequencies that are of the same caliber tend to draw themselves to each other, it's really important to be aware of your frequency, because there is no frequency or no knowledge that we cannot access if we match it. Basically, all you have to do is match a particular frequency or a level of intelligence or entity or anything. If you can match that frequency, then you have a direct link to it. For example, one of the easiest things is when you have a deceased loved one, you know their energy signature really well, especially if they're really close to you. And if you're not mourning, because when you're mourning, you're in a really dark, deep place, and you're at least trying to uplift your energy a little bit so you can be more neutral. When you think about that person and when you resonate on their frequency, you can actually communicate with them a lot easier. Or when it comes to your spirit guides, a lot of times when people name their spirit guides, because a lot of people think that their spirit guides do have names, and they might, but when you create a name or a touchstone, something that represents them, you can find it much easier to tune into their frequency. And when you do that, then you can receive information a lot easier. So that's why I always say, be aware of your frequency. And there is no frequency that you don't have access to if you can learn to tune into it. So the world is basically at your disposal on all the intelligence, because we are one with the entire universe. And some people don't understand that we are frequency because they don't see our energetic body. But even there's cameras now that can show our energy bodies. And we have electromagnetic frequency that exudes out of us. Our heart's creating this electromagnetic field that's about 3 feet around us. And when you come in contact with someone, not physically, but when you come close to someone and your electromagnetic frequencies actually collide and intertwine, you can actually receive information from that person without ever communicating mentally. That's how people feel resonance with certain people. And that all comes from frequencies and from vibration. So there's a lot more to us than the physical bodies. Just like in this room that you're in right now, there's all the radio stations and all the TV stations, all that frequencies in the room. It's just whether you have a device that can tune into that frequency. That's what determines whether we can actually listen to it or hear it or watch it.
In my Sacred Oracle trilogy, I wrote that to depict the dissection of the beingness as the multidimensional being. And living is actually our human self, mostly unconscious, but walking in the world, dipping in and out of consciousness. Being is definitely that part of us that is unconscious and goes into the shadow, animal, even monster self. And then knowing is more about the humanity. And the three of those, to me, combine and create that multidimensional self. A few weeks ago, I had on Maureen St. Germain, and she breaks down the multidimensional self as 3D, 4D, and 5D, and goes into vibration and frequency in that way. You also talk about the multidimensional self in regard to our multidimensional world and our access to intuition. Will you share how you view the multidimensional self and then how that does relate to our intuition.
Well, the more you go within, the more you realize that there are so many more worlds that we are living, coexisting in simultaneously. If you want to even talk about our souls incarnating in different lifetimes at this time, because there's no such thing as time. So our soul is incarnated in a lot of different bodies at the same time. They're just in different time periods. And when you just think about that itself as a multi-dimensional version of you, when you go within and you tap into the soul aspect of you, you already have, I'm just trying to make it sound a little bit easier. You have access to all those different versions of you that are physical. Now, in the same way that there's versions of you that are physical, there's so many different layers of you that are non-physical and that are coexisting in not just third, fourth, and fifth dimension, but every single dimension that exists. There is a version of us that exists on every plane or every level of this multiverse that exists. And I know that sounds really big for some people, but because we are energy, and we think about light. I think light is the best way. If you think about light, there's only a very small percentage of light that's visible with the naked eye, through the naked eye. There's X-ray, radio waves, there's other versions of waves that we cannot see. And in the same sense that we can't see those different frequencies of light, there's that many different versions of us that exist in this world that's connected to the entire universe. And I call it the multiverse because there's so many different levels and there's so many different dimensions. But when we go within, we have access to, for example, a dimension where time doesn't exist. And I do that with my dreams, for example. And I get to see things from anywhere from a couple of months in advance to a year in advance to even the same day. And I have access to another dimension where time is not really a fixed thing. And for my children, they just know daddy sees the future. That's part of their upbringing. And, when my grandma died, not that long ago, I had a dream 2 months in advance, and I woke up and I said, hey guys, grandma's going to die. So let's make sure we make the best of it. When she didn't live here, so we made extra calls, and then that day she got sick and she was sent to the hospital. And then even though she's made a miraculous recovery, 2 months later, she died. So that's another version of our multi-dimensional reality that we have access to. We have access to a world where time doesn't exist, for example, and we can tap into that. And sometimes you receive information that's great and exciting, and sometimes you receive information that's not so great, but it preps you for it. Like, for example, about my grandmother. But when you acknowledge that there are so many levels of reality that we don't see, you open up your mind to having more access to it. That's why all the great teachers say one thing. They say, go within to the inner worlds. They never say inner world. It's your inner worlds that are only accessible when you shut the 5 senses down. The 5 senses are your blinders. They're what keeps you in the third dimension, or now people saying fifth dimension as well. But the 5 senses lock us in this dimension. And the only way to leave this dimension or have access to other dimensions is to quiet the 5 senses. And then you can slowly hear the whisper and access the other versions. But the thing is, even if you don't do that, every time you go to sleep, you go to other dimensions anyway. So we have access to it, whether we're doing it consciously or not.
So you're talking about dream time as a source of information for yourself, for all of us. What are some of the other sources of information?
As opposed to dreams?
Yes.
Well, there's energy that is everywhere. And we have energy interpreters within us. Now, some people have a strong inner sight. They're clairvoyant. Some people are claircognizant. They know stuff. Some people are clairsentient. They feel stuff. So it's really important to first figure out what your superpower is or what the path of least resistance is. And when you do that, you can start interpreting energy. And when you start interpreting energy, then you can actually summon certain information. Say, hey, I have a question about this. Can the best resource for this question send me an energetic kind of a signal so I can have a better understanding of this? And then if you know and you have honed your inner sense, you can get your answer right away. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said, I can do the gut feeling thing. But my favorite thing is, to be honest with you, downloads. Like it's become a very common term right now because of the computer. But I'll have a huge question and I will put it out, I'll write it out, and then I will just sit or just go about my way and kind of start my day. And then the moment my frequency matches that answer, like I get a big download and I'm like, oh, wow. Like I received the entire Intuition Bible overnight, not in a dream, but in a full download. I said a prayer at night. I said, I was in the middle of another book and I was kind of stuck on that, or I felt like the book had already been written by other people so many times. And I said, what can I write that would resonate, that's important, that's pivotal in humanity's spiritual evolution right now? And in the morning, I woke up with a book. It was called How to Unleash Your Inner Wisdom at the time. And the book pretty much showed up in its entirety. And to be honest with you, I never even considered myself intuitive or a prophetic dreamer back in the day. It was not even part of my, you would have told me 20 years ago I was going to be teaching this stuff, I would have laughed. So it was just honing it, working on it, and giving myself the space to learn. And then all of a sudden, an entire book, which was way larger than what my publishers wanted it to be, just got downloaded. And because it was my soul giving me this information, every step of creating this book, including finding a publisher, was effortless. Because
it happens that way, doesn't it? It starts to flow in and lead you down the path that your soul has kind of already created for things to actually unfold. There are a lot of people out there, Happy, that are utilizing many different types of substances to have these experiences of enlightenment or heightened creativity and intuition or foresight. And it can be anything from psychedelics, it can be mushrooms, it can be different types of spiritual experiences. Can you talk about whether you support these as ways to access truly authentic intuition, or are these another form of distraction, albeit they can give benefit and they may have some other alternative effects that they're giving, but they're still just a distraction? Where do you stand on these types of things?
Well, first, I don't really stand against much, but I do have to say every drug has a very specific frequency that's limited. It has its own frequency. So sometimes when you're in a place where you're really stuck, now, first, I want to warn against addiction, because anything that you do that you are using a substance or anything external can cause addiction, and it actually can disempower your own self-worth, because you might think, I can only do this because of this drug. So that's why I don't particularly say, go do ayahuasca, although I've done ayahuasca. But I know that every drug has its own limitations, and it also disempowers the user by making them think they can only achieve this state by using this. But it can also be in an icebreaker when you feel too fixed in reality. Somebody might take ayahuasca for the first time or do mushrooms, and all of a sudden their mind opens up and then they see the world in a different way. But I always say, stop doing whatever you're doing and then pursue the natural path, because when you're doing it naturally, there is no cap when it comes to your frequency, and you can access different worlds a lot easier. And then you also can trust it more, because sometimes you can do mushrooms and have a bad experience, or sometimes you do mushrooms and you're exhausted and actually depletes your energy. And sometimes you just happen to do it with the right person, the right circumstances, and you have this euphoric experience. So just be very careful, but I always say try to achieve it in the most natural way. Become light-bodied, eat healthier foods, sleep better, connect yourself. There's a really cool thing that I heard that I really do believe. It's that if you sleep in the middle of the day, you start blurring the lines between the physical and the non-physical. So a lot of countries have the custom of siestas, or sleeping in the middle of the day, and then they tend to be more intuitive by default. And I really do like that aspect, and I tend to do that myself. I always take a nap in the middle of the day, and that's a natural way to tap in to the other side. But like I said, I'm not opposed to people doing drugs, but I just want to warn against addiction and over-reliance, because I think that can be very unhealthy.
I am very much in alignment with you on all of that, and I love how you have laid out in the book your own guidance and wisdom in regard to that subject. A little earlier, you alluded to utilizing intuition in regard to what's happening in this world and how it can really enhance our world and advance us much faster if individuals will tap more into their intuition. Can you speak a little bit more about this inner technology versus our outer technology?
Well, there's a term that says "as above, so below," and I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a very common term. And I like to think about AI, for example, and how easily accessible it has become. It's a supercomputer that has become something that a lot of people rely on right now. But it's basically all the knowledge that's out there that's digital. And now we have easy, accessible reach to that knowledge. Now, I believe in the same way that AI exists, the world of intuition, the supercomputer, whether it's your subconscious or the world, has also become easier and more accessible than before, because the veil is thinning. And it takes less effort now to tap into that world. And it can really benefit you, because although AI is basically all the information that's out there, the intuitive world is really tailored to you. So it's basically the supercomputer that is the spiritual computer that accesses information that is beneficial to you and to your growth and to your soul's purpose. Because we do have a soul's purpose. Some people say, there are a lot of teachers that say the soul doesn't really care what you do. They just want you to come and manifest and have fun and go. And I don't really align with that message. I believe that the soul has a lot invested in you, and it wants you to be the best version of yourself and transform in as many ways as possible. And some forms of transformation are more important for its agenda. And I think that when you tap into the inner world, you can tap into your soul's purpose a lot easier. And then life becomes much easier. And you end up feeling more fulfilled, more happy, and you feel like you're being of service to the world. And you're here on a path that was pre-paved for you. And now you're just stepping into the role that you were meant to live.
Within your book, you go into guidance on how to develop your intuition. It's really quite a well laid out book that step by step takes everyone through all of the concepts of intuition. It really is an intuition Bible. As we start to get towards the end of the show, I'd love to touch on some of the things that block our intuition, some of the things that keep us from having that access. Can you share some of those different things?
Well, I would like to talk more about misinterpretations and things that get us to misinterpret intuition. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think even for the expert, someone who's really, really good at tapping into their intuition, because once you learn how to interpret information, there are blockages that are preventing you from interpreting it correctly. So there's a lot of misinterpretation. There is, if you have a strong agenda for something, if you really want something to work out a certain way, then you can get a clear message and you can distort it and justify it for it to be something completely different. So everything gets filtered through your agendas, your strong emotions. If you have really strong emotions at the moment, if you're angry, you're nervous, you're scared, then those things can become huge blockages when it comes to interpreting your information. And that's a huge one. Another one is, even if you're someone who's really used to using your gut and you're having indigestion or you're detoxifying toxins out of your body at the time, and you're just feeling uneasy, or if you're being hormonal at the moment for any particular reason, those things can really allow huge misinterpretations. So I lay out all these particular ways that, or things that could block or misinterpret your intuition. And I always encourage people to check those things off and make sure they're not having a moment. They're not, recovering from an injury, or they're, although there's different methods that I teach to overcome these issues. That's why there's so many techniques in this book. But it's really good to be self-aware, know where you're at. There's an election going on right now. And so someone might tap into their intuition to find out what the results are going to be, but they're so fixated on a particular result that it's really hard to get a clear message.
The secret doorway to your uncharted territory is through meditation, and the key to escaping the chaos of life is mindfulness. An expanded awareness creates a doorway that allows the flow of information. Your intention needs to be the first thing to clarify before any exercise. This is from Happy Ali's book, The Intuition Bible, How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. You can find out more about him at happyinsights.net, and also check out his own podcast as well as his intuitive coaching, the group coaching that he offers. I want to close out the show with a statement that he has inside of the book that is really beautiful to help invite that intuition. To whom it may concern, please help me connect to a source of knowledge that has the greatest intentions for my soul's journey on this planet and the greater good. Please consider the grand plan of my current incarnation and include my personal desires accumulated during this lifetime. I give permission to access vibration and energy that is equal to or greater than my own, with great consideration for the well-being of everyone involved. Only positive energies with the highest intentions are welcome to enter my energy field. Imagine learning more and exploring even more of your own intuitive capacities. Get your copy of the Intuition Bible, How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. And get to know Happy Ali, happyinsights.net. Thank you, Happy, for being on 1111 Talk Radio. It has indeed been a pleasure. And until next week, I am Simran, in love, of love, with love, and as love. Be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality. your heart to greater compassion and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host Simran next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living here on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Remember, you are not on the journey. You are the journey.